Morning, guys.
Good morning.
Let's circle up. Bring it in.
Ready? That's what you're going to be doing for a while.
Yes, it is. Circle it in, guys. Cozy it in.
Getting a surgery or
Yeah,
what?
it's a cozy
Yeah,
circle
both
today.
days, man. Second.
Second surgery?
No, both knees on the second.
Oh,
December.
second surgery.
I'm gonna wrap my knees up for Christmas.
Okay. All right. First, let's. I feel like I'm saying the affirmation.
I know. I'm about to go.
No, I have to do it. Right. So, visitors, we have. Have you come to Morning Ascent before? Or?
No,
Awesome.
I haven't. My name's Jameson Albrecht. I'm an agent at Keller Williams, Salt Lake City.
I'm sorry.
Uh,
Just kidding.
Awesome.
You're welcome here.
Welcome,
anytime.
Jason.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Even
thanks
the
for being
Keller
here.
Williams.
Even the Keller Williams
And
agents
you,
get to know.
yeah, and I'm sure Keller Williams says the same thing about Century 21. So, you went to role play this morning too?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yes.
Saw him in the lobby at 70.
Love it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome, Jason.
What was your first name?
Jameson.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Anyone
And
else
then-
busy?
And then
Yeah.
Nicholas.
Yeah, so this is the second time I came to Ascent, brought my friend and pal Jameson. I'm also a Keller.
Awesome.
And we've been working together throughout the last few months, and yeah, just
Great.
They might have to leave early, so don't mind them guys when they bust out.
yeah.
So,
We have an appointment at 8:30.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thanks for
So-
being here. Thanks. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming a second time. Let's hear it. Gratitudes, wins. And does everyone know Jim with?
Nobody knows Jim.
I'm
Yeah.
Jim Hogan. I am with Inspiro. And
Oh.
I started Monday and just really excited to be here and be part of it.
Yeah. Thanks for being here with us.
Yeah.
I see the thing over there. I don't have a clue what Inspiro is, but hey.
Spiro Mortgage.
Okay.
Spiro Financial, but we.
Okay.
I'll catch Kevin up. He's a little slow.
Yeah. I am a little slow.
Yeah.
In case
But we
you
love
think
him
that.
anyway.
Isn't that great? We're with a company that's doing things as much as it is and implementing as much as it is with implementation that you can be gone like a month and you're like, whoa, we have a mortgage company?
We have to
What?
show up to the office
Yeah.
because I haven't seen Kevin
In my
for
defense,
about
I've been down the
3
rabbit
months.
hole on a
It's
big
been
project.
since 2018.
You're good. You're good, buddy.
That's awesome.
Awesome. We're glad you're here.
Greg had a
So-
comment.
Share a gratitude.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Gratitude wins.
Oh, come on.
Recently, I was able to hear 5 young ladies from Africa who came here as refugees.
Wow.
Speak on their life experience as a refugee. And I'm just so grateful to have the opportunity to live here. One of the ladies, she was about 20. Her family lived in a tent for 11 years while they were waiting in a refugee camp from Liberia to get approved to come here. And she said only 1% of the refugees in that country are able to get their papers approved. And they had to come here without their father.
Wow. Her
Siblings and her mother. Families divided for who knows how many years. So I'm grateful. We may have problems in our lives, but the perspective is wow. And the commonality with all 5 speakers was their opportunity to finish some kind of an education once they got here. And how grateful I am to have the real estate knowledge that I have, to be able to use it to work.
Well said.
That's awesome. From those stories and hearing people's accounts, for me, one thing I think about is sometimes we think this just isn't possible. I can't do this, right? Like something's in front of you, but when you hear stories like that, you find out with the human spirit just how much we can adapt and rise up and get through things, right, in the right way. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
So I'm gonna mention a goal because it's that time of year. Through your guys' help for the last 5-6 years, we've provided Christmas dinners for families that otherwise cannot afford it, and the goal this year will be 12 plus families. Anyone that wants
Was
to
it Thanksgiving or Christmas?
what Christmas?
Christmas.
Christmas, yeah. Anyone that wants to contribute, just let me know. We generally take cash donations. Then anyone that wants to help out, we'll have a day the week before where we'll go buy and deliver to the families.
Nice. Jonathan does that every year, and thank you for doing that.
That's awesome.
It's awesome. Yeah.
Anyone else? Yeah. Jeff.
Oh, no, I was signaling him from the
Oh. Anyone else? Gratitudes, wins, victories.
I wanted to share one. Just off of what Greg was saying, we have like a third cousin that's here from India doing an MBA, and he's really missing his family. So yesterday, he came over and my mom was cooking him dinner, and he was in tears because he's like, I really miss my mom. People travel so far to just accomplish their dreams and make efforts, even though they're losing something, they're also gaining something. He's like, you guys are family away from my family. And I walked into that. I was late at work. She's like, you were at work so late. I'm like, I know. But I was grateful for my own family. And you don't realize that sometimes we take it for granted. That just reminded me of that people travel so far, and we are so grateful for being in a country where people are traveling thousands of miles just to come here for an education or an opportunity. And we live here, and we have that opportunity every day. And so I'm grateful for that. And the people I'm around all the time, and constant learning, and the environment, just people you surround yourself with. Be thankful for them, right? I love that.
Thank you, Ruben.
I thought you said NBA.
NBA.
N.
Oh, NBA? Oh, I wish. I'd be like, you want to be my best friend? I've been trying to convince my nephews to go there, so.
Yeah.
I got a
Yeah.
quick gratitude. I seriously want to, I'm grateful for these two showing up and going through the
Yeah.
pain of role play in the morning.
It's great.
And other people who have, in the past, came into this environment and really elevated their environment. And seeing old friends come back and the new friends emerge. I'm grateful for who we are and what we represent as a culture here. I'm proud of that and proud to share that with other good people, so.
Thank you, Rick. Anyone else? Okay. All right. Who has the book or has read the book, is reading the book?
Thanks.
See you guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. So I didn't see that. Who has it? John. There we go.
I do.
Okay.
Audio counts, right?
What's that?
Yes, the audio counts.
Yes, it does. And in fact, Jason mentioned this before, but if you have the audio version, it's kind of funny. It's interesting because the author does the narration himself, and he'll take on different voices for different characters.
He does a really good job,
So
actually.
he does.
It's very
he does.
engaging.
Yeah. But both books, the book we just read, Never Split the Difference. And by the way, if you're not aware, we don't have it up here. I'll make sure it's on the board, but The Traveler's Gift is what we're reading. It was the first day. So I want to say that Never Split the Difference, excellent book. I didn't get through all of it, but things you pick up within that book that we can apply to our business is incredible. This book is very different. It's more of a storyline type thing, and it shares, I guess...
Principles.
Yeah, principles. Thank you. Personal principles that we can follow in our own lives. So for those that have read the book, are familiar with it, this week we've gone through chapters 1 through 3. And chapters 1 through 2, it kind of sets the stage for this. And it follows an individual that's facing some hardships. So does someone want to bring us up to speed very quickly? I know John always, man, your memory of these books, John, is like crazy. But the first couple chapters, who wants to just catch us up and give us the storyline of how this is being set up? If you can.
I'll throw,
Thanks,
I mean, I haven't listened to it recently, but he's a struggling father, and he basically is having a tough time making the bills and paying for things, and then he loses his job, which makes it worse, and very, very frustrated. I'm really, really slaughtering this, but he gets in an accident on the way home, and goes into a dream state, and that's what sets the stage for the traveling.
So, thank you. So, within that, yeah, he's an executive within a company. A larger conglomerate is doing a hostile takeover. They're doing everything they can to keep the company together. He could have opted out and taken severance before that, but he decided to stick with it. And he's just working nights and nights on end, trying to somehow help salvage this company. And it's still, the takeover goes through. He's jobless. He's 46. He has the same home he's had forever, a wife, a child, a daughter. So he's just in this state, like, you're already starting to feel like this isn't fair. I've done everything I possibly could. Everything. And in fact, like, some nights he doesn't come home because he's just working. And then you kind of fast forward a little bit, and he has to take a job at a hardware store, like stocking things at a hardware store. And you can imagine like what may be going through his mind, going from where he was to where he is, and trying to make sense of that. And basically, it's just, have you guys been in that situation where it's just one thing after another? It's like you already feel beaten down, and then what happens? Something else happens, right?
I always like to say that tragedy comes in a trio. So, you know, it's like, okay, what's next? You know, it's going to come.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So in his situation, literally it comes down to the point where they've maxed out credit cards, doesn't know how he's going to pay the mortgage, no money in their account, working minimum wage at this hardware store. His wife calls him, and he takes a personal call while at work, and she says, their daughter, who's been having a really hard time sleeping, has been sick, went to the doctor, and they found out she needs to have her tonsils out, and it's going to cost this much. And so they get in this exchange. She's like, but we don't have the money for that, but he wants to help, and obviously feeling like a failure. The
No
wife is
insurance or
crying on the
something like
phone,
that.
no insurance, because he's working minimum wage at a hardware store. And then on top of all of this, you're reading this, and you're like, man, that's tough. Like, holy cow. And then on top of this, a couple times during this call, the store owner tells him, you're not supposed to be on the phone, get off the phone. And then he gets off the phone, and he's so downtrodden, and the hardware store owner tells him, you're fired. You have no job. Leave. And can you imagine? So on the way home, he's literally like, I don't know if you guys have been there, but
Maybe a
like,
little distracted
he starts
driver.
to go like cuckoo is the best word I can say. He starts to just laugh nonstop, and he's laughing and crying at the same time. And yeah, so he starts just speeding in this old beat up car he had to buy from a high school student. And then he hits some ice. All of a sudden, going into chapter 3 is when this experience starts. So in interest of time, I'm gonna tell you like what happens in the beginning of this experience, and I'm just gonna read a few excerpts, and I'd really like to hear your guys' opinion about these things. But he literally wakes up, and he's in this this room that he's unfamiliar with, and there's an older gentleman there, and he finds out that he's in Germany, and he sooner or later realizes he's with President Harry S. Truman. And he's just like, what is going on right now, right? And he starts to have an exchange with President Truman. And so that's, just to set the stage for this book, that's kind of what happens. He's going to have these different experiences with different individuals throughout history that teach him a new principle that he can apply. Yeah, John.
So when right before he hit the tree, he was in the car, he was yelling out loud, why me?
Thank you, yeah.
Why me? And so when he gets there with Harry Truman, Harry Truman tells him to sit in a chair, I'm very busy, I'll be with you in a second. And just sitting there stewing, and Harry says, and the question you really should be asking yourself is, why not you?
Thank you, thanks. And we've been in situations like that, right? Like, does this not happen to everyone else? Like, why me? It comes very easily in situations like that, when circumstances are difficult. More than difficult, but nearly impossible sometimes. So anyway, President Truman is trying to explain to him, like, this concept, why not you, instead of why you. And he starts to go through looking at circumstances differently in our lives. And one, let's see.
Well, something
yeah.
he said that I've heard said and rattled me the first time I heard it. What was the circumstance you were in is a direct result of all your choices leading up to now.
Yep.
That's powerful.
And it's hard to accept, and that's perfect because there's a statement here, and there's a portion in which President Truman says your future is what you decide it to be, right?
Right.
Through your choices and thoughts and things like that, which we'll go into. But the man's name is David, and he says, "You say my future is what I decide it to be," David ventured. "I'm not sure I agree with that. My president is certainly not of my making. I worked for years to finally end up with no job, no money, and no prospects." And then he replies, President Truman replies saying, "David, we are all in situations of our own choosing. Our thinking creates a pathway to success or failure. By disclaiming responsibility for your present, we crush the prospect of an incredible future that might have been ours." And then, of course, David says, I don't understand, right? So what do you guys think of that?
You know, what comes to my mind, and I think Phil can relate to this, is what happened to me at Coldwell. I was #1 in recruiting, the only one doing a training program, and I came in one day and within 15 minutes was fired. So was the other manager. And I could give all the reasons of why not, but we worked extremely hard to develop programs with lending and with the brokerage and different things. How is that possible? But as as I'm here today and I can see the overall journey of why not me, I would have never found this place, never have done the things that we're doing here, because somebody else's best friend needed a job. I was out. That's real life. Why not? I mean, again, I stayed 3 years after that. And it wasn't until Phil actually recruited me here, said, "Look, it's everything you've been doing on steroids." So I look at that, and as I apply it to my life, was it fair? No. But that's life. Life's not fair, and that's fair.
So going with that real quick, guys, I want to repeat this statement. It says, "By disclaiming responsibility for our present, we crush the prospect of an incredible future that might have been ours."
There you go.
So,
Well, and in the book he points out, he says, I'm jobless, I'm this and that, and that wasn't my choice. And Harry said, well, isn't it you that chose not to take the severance packet and stay there until you got fired? Isn't
Wow.
you that chose this? Isn't? And so there are a lot of situations we can be in that, well, my cerebral palsy, I didn't choose it. But every day how I live is a direct reflection of how I choose to live with that.
I love that.
so yeah.
George Morris said something to me once a long time ago that I've always stuck. He was having a conversation with his daughter, and I don't know if it was the daughter that came up with it or him, but it was the takeaway was he said life isn't fair for anybody, and that's why it's fair for everyone.
That's it.
And I thought that was really profound. You know,
Yeah.
there's an equalizer that's always going on. It's how we rise through that determines our altitude.
So it's
you know?
great is when we grow into things and we have that hindsight, right, and that new perspective, like you talked about, John, and you talked about, Rick. It's easy to look back, and many times we're grateful for those experiences. However, in the here and now, when you're going through it, I just want to say I get it. It's not exactly easy. It's not supposed to be easy, right? And so real quick, so David responds in that way, and he tries to tell him, Harry Truman tries to tell him, like, just what John said, like, your thoughts, everything has led to this point. And when things are so bad, David stands up and he says, "That's not true," he cried angrily. "I did a good job at the plant. I could have taken early retirement, but I stayed. I stayed to help the company remain afloat, and I was fired. It was not my fault. So, Lindsay, you have something you want to share?
That's interesting because I actually, I was thinking about a morning message that I wanted to give out to the agents today, and it's interesting to think too, I mean, really the power of choice, right? It goes back to just the craziness of my, like this morning I was just thinking about, oh, my health. People only knew what I've been through this year. They would be amazed how I'm standing still, right? Like, and even I am amazed at times. And one of the things I think that I reflected on this morning was just the power of choice and the power of how we get to respond, right? And life happens for us, not to us. If that's a true statement, then everything you're doing and everything that has happened has come from your choices. I was listening to Abraham Hicks, and she was talking about the power of manifestation through money specifically, right? And one of the things that I love that she said this morning is just that, is everything that you're doing, and basically everything that has come to you has come through your manifestation, through your choices, if we want to say that, through your intention of goal setting, through whatever it may be, right? And that was one of the biggest things that I've kind of taken away this year is everything you ask for in life, or everything you have in life, is a direct reflection of what you've asked for. And whether you want to choose to believe that or not, it is, good or bad, it has happened to you for a reason. And it is your power and your choice to how you decide that you're going to live with it, and are you going to take it and you're going to run with it. But one of the things that I think that reflects on this is specifically, Chris, that I love is, and I was even talking to George about it, is for me this year is how much of I guess you could say a testament for me of how the power of canned presentations, the power of scripts, the power of at such a different level, right? Because that is a choice for me that I chose to learn those things, to ingrain those things into me, that on the days that I had no idea or even a thought to wanting to be here, right, I was able to come in and still be who I needed to be for the other person. And because of that, I was able to pull myself out of those hard times, right? Because I was intentionally, as Abraham said this morning, giving love to other people, you get love back in return. And so I think it just really boils down to the power of intention, the power of the way you want to, respond.
Thoughts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thoughts are a big
thoughts.
part, which we'll talk about in a minute. Yeah.
Yeah, so your first question that you asked, what did that statement speak to me by President Truman, right? And one of the things, I hope this comes out right, but we can all be motivated by different things in life. And one of the things that motivates me that I just remembered was my definition of hell is when I pass on from this life and I can see myself on the other side of what I could have became. And essentially, to me, that's what President Truman was saying there. He says, look, you're in this situation, but you're missing out on so much that you could become if you just pull your head out of your butt and start thinking correctly and do things correctly. And so, yeah, I like that. Because think about that for a minute. If you went through your whole life and then you passed from this life and you looked at yourself on the other side and everything you could have had with your God-given talents or whatever you worked for, that would be the ultimate hell. To see yourself with so much and you have so little.
The interesting thing is you're literally describing a part of this book.
Hey, I read it.
You
Cool.
need to read it, yeah. But so with what's said, yes. So President Truman is trying to walk him through this and help him understand this and being patient with him through this, because he's going through something that's really tough. And I sense from this guy David, the character, that when someone tells you like it's all in your attitude, you just gotta think the right thing, right? Sometimes when you're going through this, you just want to punch someone, right? It's just like, you know what I mean? It's like someone telling you this stuff. And so one part he says is, so President Truman says, just like we're already saying here, listen to me now. You are where you are because of your thinking. Your thinking dictates your decisions. Decisions are choices. And he goes through, just like you said, John, years ago you decided what college to go to, you decided like what company to go with, you decided to stay with the company, all of this, right? And he's starting to open his eyes a little bit. And then he says the words, "It's not my fault," should never again come from your mouth. The words, "It's not my fault," have been symbolically written on the gravestones of unsuccessful people, like since the beginning of time. When Lindsay was talking about things that she's going through and she shows up at work, right? If I carry that with me and I respond in that way to situations throughout the day and I say, oh, that figures, like, or yeah, I'm being picked on right now, whether it's by God or universe or whatever it is, like I am just being picked on, it's just not fair. Do we see the way in which we show up to other individuals around us and how we're literally feeding more bad energy, bad emotion,
It's
bad
not their
responses
fault.
from others throughout the day?
That's one of my biggest things is like the way you show up or what you're going through is nobody else's fault. Don't show up and respond to them because of something you're going through. Like that is something that I think, you know, and George has always said that to me is part of the leadership team is it is our job to leave it at the door. Like
Good.
agents they can bring it, but it is our job to leave it at the door.
Yeah.
And I've just had to, you know, and it's just the power of your rituals and
Yeah.
your habits.
I wanted to say, just on that too, it's your choice on how you respond and how that you let it linger. The time is gonna pass, it's up to you how
Yeah.
you want it to pass.
Yeah.
You can either look at it as an opportunity to learn, or you can look at it as a failure. It's up to you. Things are gonna happen. We've been through so much, and so is everybody else.
Mhm.
Just because you're going through something, that doesn't mean someone else isn't. And so being positive and looking at every aspect of life that you're gonna pass the time. It's up to you if you wanna be miserable, or if you wanna be happy, or you wanna be positive and look at it the way you wanna look at it.
Yeah.
Everyone has their own views, but if you try to be a little positive, like, okay, breathe a little bit, I can get through it.
And
Yeah.
what's interesting is we focus so much on ourselves and our situation, we have an inability to see other people around us
Yeah.
and to be present
Yeah.
and to just seek understanding and perspective
Yeah.
instead of this is the way. Do you guys see that? Like when I'm going through stuff, the hard part, and it's unfair, but the hard part is when I'm going through these things, I am like trying to figure things out for myself and what's going on. However, when that happens, that turns me so inward. Yeah, like we're not able to find opportunity around us. We're not able to connect with people or help other people in general, serve others in the right way. Just, yeah.
You know, we could keep going on this subject,
Yeah.
because it's
Oh, yeah.
such a deep principle,
Yeah.
and there's so many things tied in with it. But one of the things that I was having a conversation with my daughter on, and just really compelling, powerful thing is, we all hunt, right? You know, I mean, we understand the concept of a rifle. We point it, and we line up this scope and that scope, and for the most part, the bullet's gonna go where you're aiming, right? I mean, there's some wind factors and some other things, and the length that the bullet can shoot, all that kind of stuff. But our life is a lot the same way, and I believe that we cannot always control our current circumstances, okay? You know, life shows up for us, right? But we can control which direction we move out of it. And just like a rifle or a gun, we get to choose where we'd like to be. And we can work towards that. And if we keep focused on that, we don't get distracted. Just like that rifle, it's going to carry our circumstances toward that goal. Does that make sense? And so it's just really powerful to just to say, stop, hey, I can't control what's happening here, but I can control how I feel about it. I can control what I want to learn from it. I can control where I want to move towards, and just realize that life is happening for us. And sometimes we get, it's like a record. It keeps scratching, it keeps repeating. I believe our spirit is eternal, and it can handle the heat. It's our physical nature that struggles. And it wants to repeat until we learn that lesson. And until we learn that lesson, we're not going to be moving on in many cases. So
He says that here the bad news is the past was in your hands, but the good news is that the future, my friend, is also in your hands.
The ending
Yeah.
is phenomenal.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go through a couple statements here because we need to wrap up.
No, each chapter has a.
Yeah.
Are you gonna read that?
He wants to jump to the end.
Oh yeah, no, okay, I get what you guys are saying. So in every instance when David meets with someone else in history that's been great in their own right, for example, President Truman, he's given a note from that individual, and then he's supposed to read this longer note. And it's literally kind of explaining these things in detail that he can take with him. So I'm going to read a couple excerpts from this note. I am going to say before I read this, I'm gonna challenge you, like, if this is something that resonates with you, and if this is like something that not only like in taking ownership of things, but some of these principles, I will tell you, like, reading this book put me on a course that I know I would not have been on had I not read the book. So I'm just going to challenge you today to pick up the book, read it. Like, the discussion that we're having, it's just like any of these books, it's really hard to wrap in all of the concepts and things within these principles that we're learning. So next week we're going to be reading chapters 4 and 5. Just jump into it. It's an easy read. The chapters are fairly short. So I'm going to read just a couple things in wrapping up these thoughts here in the way that President Truman says it. A couple things he says. By accepting responsibility for my past, I free myself to move into a bigger, brighter future of my own choosing. And then wrapping up the other thing, he says, I am where I am today, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and financially because of decisions I have made. My decisions have always been governed by my thinking. Therefore, I am where I am today, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and financially because of how I think. Today, I will begin the process of changing where I am mentally, it goes through all that, by changing the way I think. A couple other things I really liked that he mentioned in the way he put it, and I'll probably wrap up with these couple. He says, when faced with the opportunity to make a decision, I will make one. How many times do we sit back from the decision and think it over until we're like, yeah, I'm not going to do it? Where we don't realize that the whole idea or thought that came to us is the very reason that we should act on it. He says, I understand that God did not put in me the ability to always make right decisions. He did, however, put in me the ability to make a decision and then make it right. The rise and fall of my emotional tide will not deter me from my course. I don't make decisions solely based off of emotions, right? When I make a decision, I will stand behind it. My energy will go into making the decision. I will waste none on second thoughts. My life will not be an apology, it will be a statement. Yeah, well, I could have done this, but this happened in my life. Sorry. I would help you, but this is going on in my life. How many times do we have thoughts like that or statements we say to ourselves? And then just wrapping up, he says, in the future, when I am tempted to ask the question, why me? I will immediately counter with the answer, why not me? Challenges are gifts, opportunities to learn. Problems are the common thread running through the lives of great men and women. In times of adversity, I will not have a problem to deal with. I will have a choice to make. My thoughts will be clear. I will make the right choice. Adversity is preparation for greatness. I will accept this preparation. Why me? Why not me? I will be prepared for something great. So look at, if you're in the fire right now, whatever you're going through. Lindsay's had a rough year. In my own way, I've had a rough year. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I've had a rough year in certain aspects. Rick, Ruby, the more I've gotten to know some of you as individuals, I've seen and heard things. I'm like, wow, like that is a lot to go through. But I will tell you, and when you share these things with others, others see it that you are literally being prepared for something greater. Most of the time we don't move out of these things ourselves, out of comfort ourselves, because we're comfortable. Sometimes life, when it's leading us into something better, will throw things our way, where we have to adapt, where we have to change and become better. So start to look at it that way, right? Every single thing that's difficult for you today is leading you into something better if you respond to it the right way and make the right choices.
And I
have
just
the right
want to add
thoughts.
to that, just you have the ability to reset your mindset like that if you want to, and change someone else's energy right in front of you. Instead of like taking someone else's energy on, change it. Be positive and change that environment. You're able to reset any moment.
There's a reason that the first principle in this is taking ownership, right? There's a reason that that's there. I've said you cannot move forward until you take ownership. You can't. You're hindered. You're blocked. And the interesting thing is you're focusing on the outlying things as the reason you can't move forward, and that's why you don't have control of your life. Once you look at, and we've talked about this, right? Once you look at things around you in the sense of How do I make this work? What do I need to do to get there? That's where you become creative and you turn into someone that you never knew you were capable of becoming. And you can affect the lives of those around you.
Chris, just on that note too, there's a question that I learned from Tony Robbins that I loved years ago. And it is when you're faced with adversity, because the reality is, I'm going to challenge all of you, there are very few things that are actually happening to you that you haven't chosen. You know, like John's situation, right? But again, John is even saying I have the power of choice to how I respond. There's a great question that I always have asked myself, or when you're in those moments of adversity where you're going, oh, why me? Why is this always happening to me? How come I'm not making the money I need? Blah, blah, blah. Whatever question you're saying to yourself. I love the question that he asked me. He says, what lesson am I here to learn? What lesson have I not learned yet that I still need to learn? If you're continuing to face the same thing, it is you and how you're responding. So ask yourself better questions to get yourself out of it too.
And once you do that, lastly, you become more capable than you ever thought. John is much more capable than me in areas because of things he's faced. Kelly's more capable than me in areas because of things you faced that I may not have. So, yes, it's building you.
Yeah, no, that's very powerful. I'm sure you've all heard, well, that sucks. Why is that gonna happen to you? And one time when I heard that, I thought, well, if I have hard times, how am I ever gonna learn compassion for other people?
Yeah. So next week, guys, chapters 4 and 5, please read, and yeah, it'll be a great discussion.
Hey, Chris, I didn't know where we're at, but so up till 5.
Next week, chapters 4 and 5 is
Okay.
what we're reading.
I just want to challenge everybody on this. So because I know a lot of us went to John Maxwell, you guys, one of the things that I love that he kept saying is the 5 things he does every day. I read, I write, I file, right? And then so I think, right? But I love one of the things that he said in regards to reading, and it's something that it stood out to me when I took the UCLA stats, right? Is there's power behind listening to an audio, but there's also power behind actually picking up a book, highlighting it, writing in it, and actually then going back. And what John Maxwell said is, first I read the book and I mark it, then I read the book again and the book marks me.
I love that.
Statement.
Yeah, I loved that.
It's a good statement.
Challenge you guys to actually read
This is
book. It's
definitely a
great
book that's worthy of both an audio and a hard copy, so we'll get the hard copy.
Okay, awesome. All right, guys, thanks. Let's have an
I'll
awesome
have
day.
quick question.
Oh.
I was going to say, yeah, the reason you read a book, I mean, audio is great, but books allow you to pause and internalize, and then you can go on.
Yeah.
And unless you're stopping the audio, you're not.
Oh, I did that. I had to rewind 15 seconds. Bam! What was that? Bam!
What was that?
Bam!
Whatever.
Bam, bam.
Okay, I succeed because I act on my goal.